In 1948, the Army Corps of Engineers finished the tallest earth and rock dam on Earth. 432 feet of packed rock and fill, hidden in the forest about 40 miles southeast of Seattle, above a river called the White. It was built for one reason: to stop what Mount Rainier sends down the valley before it reaches the towns. The internet will tell you that dam is what stands between the mountain and the people below it. We checked. It sits on the wrong river, and Mount Rainier does not need to erupt to bury them. Start with the dam, because the dam has earned it. When the low bid came in on August 25, 1939, the job went to the Guy F. Atkinson Company out of San Francisco for $5,344,605. They broke ground that same year. To build a dam across the White River, you first have to move the White River, so the crews drove a tunnel 23 feet wide through the canyon wall and, on September 1, 1940, sent the entire river through it. Then the war came. In July of 1942, wartime restrictions shut civilian construction down, and the half-finished dam sat waiting for 3 years. Work resumed, and the dam topped out in 1948. When it was done, nothing else like it on the planet stood taller. 2 tunnels carried the river through it, fitted with big cone-shaped Howell-Bunger valves that could throttle the flow down to a controlled spray. And here is the part the doom videos skip. Mud Mountain Dam was not built to stop a volcano. It was built to stop a flood. The Flood Control Act of 1936 authorized it after the White River kept drowning the farms and towns downstream. And to this day, the reservoir behind it sits nearly empty, drawn down on purpose, waiting to catch high water and let it back out slowly. That is what a flood control dam does. A lahar is not a flood. A lahar is a moving river of rock, mud, ground-up mountain, and shattered glacier ice, running like wet concrete, and the wall of earth in that canyon was never designed to arm wrestle one. But say it had to. Say a lahar came straight down the White River toward that dam. The United States Geological Survey ran exactly that question in a report called Professional Paper 1547, and the number they published is not the comforting one. The reservoir's usable storage, everything above dead storage, is about 131 million cubic meters. That works out to roughly 57% of the design Lahar the report models. 57%, the flow the engineers used as their own planning scenario, would fill the reservoir and keep coming, up and over the top, down the valley toward Auburn and Kent and the southern edge of Seattle. And the planning scenario is nowhere near the worst the mountain has done. About 5,600 years ago, the entire northeast face of Mount Rainier collapsed. Geologists Kevin Scott and James Vallance mapped what came down, and the scale is hard to hold in your head. Around 3.8 cubic kilometers of the mountain, roughly 10 to 20 times the size of the flow the dam was measured against, poured off the summit and ran more than 120 miles, all the way to the shore of Puget Sound. They call it the Osceola mudflow. The flat, fertile ground it left behind is the ground the towns of Kent, Auburn, and the Tacoma tide flats sit on today. That one event was about 30 times the entire storage of Mud Mountain Dam. So the dam holds a little more than half of a moderate lahar, on the one river most of the towns at risk do not sit on. Because here is the geography nobody puts in the thumbnail. Mud Mountain Dam is on the White River, off the northeast side of the mountain. The town everyone names when they talk about Rainier, Orting, sits at the meeting point of 2 completely different rivers, the Puyallup and the Carbon, draining the west and northwest flanks. And Professional Paper 1547 says it in plain language. The Puyallup and Carbon river systems have no reservoirs. None. There is no dam protecting Orting. There was never going to be one big enough. Which brings us to the claim this whole video exists to correct. The doom channels all frame Rainier the same way. They wait for it to erupt. They count earthquakes and watch for the blast. But the deadliest thing Mount Rainier can do does not require an eruption at all. Around 500 years ago, close to the year 1500, the west flank of the mountain simply let go and sent a wall of mud down the Puyallup Valley, straight through where Orting stands now. It is called the Electron mudflow. And when a USGS study, led by Thomas Sisson, went looking for the eruption that must have triggered it, they could not find one. No ash layer, no lava, no blast. The mountain came apart under its own weight. How does a mountain fall down with no warning at all? The answer is inside the rock. For hundreds of thousands of years, hot, acidic water has circulated through the upper cone of Rainier, and it has been quietly rotting the volcano from the inside, turning hard rock into soft clay. Geologist Dwight Crandall was the first to map these weak, altered zones back in the 1960s, and every study since has sharpened the picture. You have the steepest, iciest big volcano in the lower 48 states, and a large piece of its summit is chemically decayed rock perched at a high, unstable angle. The USGS is blunt about what that means. A collapse like that can happen, in their words, without any precursory activity detected by seismometers or other instruments. No swarm, no siren. A clear afternoon, and then the valley is gone. That is also why the word overdue is wrong. You will hear it constantly. Rainier is overdue to erupt. The USGS does not talk that way because volcanoes do not run on a schedule. What the record actually shows, in Fact Sheet 1997-0065, is that lahars big enough to reach the lowlands have come off Rainier on average every 500 to 1,000 years. A flow with a 500-year return has about a 1 in 7 chance of arriving inside a single human lifetime. Not overdue, not tomorrow, but not rare enough to shrug off either. Here is what makes all of this so easy to forget. Drive through Orting, or Puyallup, or Sumner today, and you see soccer fields, strip malls, cul-de-sacs, an ordinary American valley. What you are actually standing on is the flattened remains of the last time the mountain came down. The USGS Lahar hazard maps for these valleys are not guesswork. They trace the real paths the mud has taken before. Down the Puyallup, down the Carbon, down the Nisqually and the White. And the safe ground is simply the higher land those flows could not climb. Whole communities have grown up on that valley floor in the roughly 500 years since the electron flow, long enough for the danger to feel like someone else's problem, and for the ground to fill up with people. Before we get to the defense, understand the size of what is being defended. A 2024 USGS estimate put more than 90,000 people inside Mount Rainier's mapped Lahar hazard zones. An earlier, detailed study by Nathan Wood and Christopher Soulard counted 78,049 residents, nearly 60,000 workers, and almost 4,000 businesses inside the electron-style inundation zone, generating around $16 billion in sales a year. Widen the frame to everyone living on top of old Rainier mudflow deposits, valley floor that a lahar built, and the number climbs past 150,000. Those are two different figures measuring two different things, and the scare videos love to blur them together. One is who gets hit by the modeled flow. The other is who lives on ground the mountain has buried before. There is no honest death toll for a future Rainier lahar, and anyone who hands you a precise body count is guessing. But there is a real event that shows what a lahar does to a town caught flat-footed. In November of 1985, a fairly small lahar off a volcano called Nevado del Ruiz in Colombia reached the town of Armero in the dark. It killed about 23,000 people in a matter of minutes. Armero had no working warning system. That is the entire reason the next part of this story exists. Because the honest answer to how you survive a Rainier lahar is not a dam. It is a head start measured in minutes. In 1998, after years of work between the USGS, Pierce County, and Washington State, a lahar detection and warning system went live in the valleys below the mountain. The heart of it is a set of sensors buried along the rivers, called acoustic flow monitors, tuned to feel the specific ground vibration a lahar makes as it grinds down the channel. The first design put 10 of them in the 2 valleys that matter most, 5 along the Puyallup and 5 along the Carbon, wired by radio back to the county and the State Emergency Operations Center. They do not watch for an eruption. They listen for the ground to start shaking in a way only a wall of dwarfing rock can make it shake. That first system was analog and aging, and the 2014 Oso landslide, which killed 43 people not far to the north, forced a hard look at whether it would really catch a fast, wet flow in time. So starting around 2016, the sensors went digital. Broadband seismometers and infrasound and cameras were added. And in 2020, a new station went in up at Paradise, on the mountain itself. Down in the valley towns, from Orting all the way to the port of Tacoma, a line of outdoor sirens stands ready. You can hear them tested on the first Monday of every month at noon, with a voice message in English and Spanish. In a real event, they do not beep once. They wail, and they do not stop. And this is the number that actually decides whether people live. When the sensors trip and the sirens sound, how long does Orting have? The USGS has modeled it more than once. Fact sheet 2008-3062 put it at as little as 40 minutes from the moment the warning goes out. A run in 2024 of a newer computer model called D-Claw showed a large lahar reaching Orting in as little as 50 minutes, with about 60 minutes in a worst case. So the honest window is 40 to 60 minutes of flow time. And then you subtract the seconds it takes to detect the flow, confirm it, and sound the alarm, and that window only gets shorter. If you are finding this useful, take a second to subscribe. We dig into the real history and the real engineering behind America's landmarks every week, the machines, the numbers, and the stories the internet keeps getting wrong. Now back to those 40 minutes, because they hide a problem. 40 minutes sounds survivable, right up until you look at how people actually get out. Many residents in Orting have to cross the very rivers the lahar is coming down in order to reach high ground, and past drills have shown that moving an entire town on foot can take longer than the flow gives you. That is why Orting has spent years working toward a dedicated pedestrian evacuation bridge, sometimes called the Bridge for Kids, a walkway aimed straight at the high ground so school children are not funneled onto roads and over the wrong river crossings. And it is why, on March 21st, 2024, more than 45,000 students across the region walked out of their classrooms in what was billed as the largest lahar evacuation drill in the world. They rehearse it because the mountain does not send a second warning. Now, about those earthquakes. In July of 2025, Mount Rainier produced the largest earthquake swarm ever recorded on the mountain. The headlines went where headlines always go. But the USGS numbers tell a calmer story. By late August, scientists had located around 1,350 earthquakes, and the biggest of the entire swarm measured magnitude 2.4 on July 11th. Automated methods picked up thousands more tiny ones. But the cause was not rising magma. It was hot water moving through the volcano's plumbing, a hydrothermal swarm. On August 4, 2025, USGS scientists Christoph Kern and Laura Clore flew an aircraft through the gas plume above the summit and found water vapor and carbon dioxide, but no sulfur dioxide, the gas you would expect if fresh magma were climbing toward the surface. Through the entire episode, the alert level stayed exactly where it had been. Green. Normal. The most recent scare was smaller still. On July 3, 2026, sensors picked up a minor debris flow in Tahoma Creek on the mountain's southwest side. The USGS inferred it came from a sudden burst of meltwater off the South Tahoma Glacier. A glacial outburst, not a landslide, and not a lahar, and the alert level never moved off green. And when a British tabloid ran a headline about the mountain entering an unprecedented 72-hour tremor phase, the scientists who actually run the seismic network had a plain explanation. That signal was never the volcano. It was one malfunctioning old sensor feeding bad data into the network. So what would actually be worth worrying about? The scientists are clear on that too. A move off the green, normal alert level, sulfur dioxide showing up in the gas, the fingerprint of magma on the rise, or the ground surface itself beginning to swell and hold that swelling, week after week. As of the most recent updates from the Cascades Volcano Observatory, none of those things was happening. What you do not need to lose sleep over is a magnitude 2 tremor you cannot even feel, or a muddy creek after a hot afternoon. It is worth going back to that dam one more time because it is not useless, and calling it a fraud would be its own kind of lie. Mud Mountain Dam still does its real job every single winter. The crews long ago relined that original diversion tunnel with high-strength steel because decades of gravel and grit tearing through it had chewed the concrete away, and a newer intake structure with radial gates now meters water through in a controlled trickle. In 1991, they even added 9 feet to the crest. When the rivers rage in a wet Pacific Northwest winter, that dam swallows the flood and doles it back out slowly, and the towns downstream stay dry. It is a genuine piece of engineering doing genuine work. It simply was never the shield against the mountain that people imagine it to be. And there is a reason Rainier, not the far more famous Mount St. Helens next door, is the one that keeps scientists up at night. St. Helens is what erupts. Rainier is what collapses. It carries more ice and snow than any other peak in the lower 48, about 25 named glaciers wrapped around a cone of chemically weakened rock, sitting directly above some of the fastest-growing suburbs in Washington. Melt that ice with heat, or simply let a rotten slab of the summit give way, and you have the raw material for a lahar with nowhere to go but down, toward the neighborhoods. The world's volcanologists once named Rainier one of a short list of decade volcanoes, the handful worldwide, singled out for study precisely because so many people live in the shadow of so much danger. Picture the Electron mudflow again, the one from around the year 1500, but arriving this afternoon. That same wall of clay and rock would come down the Puyallup Valley into a landscape that now holds tens of thousands of homes, schools, highways, and rail lines, sitting on the exact ground the last flow flattened. There is no reservoir on that river to slow it. There is no 432-foot wall waiting to catch it. There is only the buried sensor that feels it first, the siren that follows, and the minutes in between. That is the entire defense. Time. And maybe that is the quiet irony of this whole place. This is a channel about machines, and we came here for a dam, 432 feet of the largest earth fill on the planet, the kind of rock and concrete that looks like it could stop anything. But the machines that actually stand guard over Orting are almost invisible. Steel canisters buried in the riverbanks, listening to the ground. They hold nothing back. They cannot. All they do is notice, a few minutes before any person could, that the mountain has begun to move and turn that handful of minutes into a chance to run. In a valley where nothing built by hand can outmuscle the mountain, the machine that wins is the one that only has to outlisten it. So the next time a headline tells you Mount Rainier is about to blow, remember what the record actually says. It probably will not erupt on any timeline that matters to you, but it does not have to. The real danger is a silent collapse on an ordinary day. The dam that would meet it is on the wrong river and built for a smaller fight, and the only thing standing between the mountain and the towns is a warning counted in minutes and a community that has practiced running. If this is the kind of story you want more of, we did the whole thing on the single tunnel that is the only object holding back Spirit Lake at Mount St. Helens, another place where one quiet piece of engineering is all that stands between a mountain and the valley below. It is linked right here. Rainier is patient. The people living in its shadow just have to be faster.